How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about Seattle's City Council voting near unanimously to defund the police as a result of all the Black Lives Matter so-called protests, really riots, as well as Antifa, the whole George Floyd kerfuffle. And as a result of that, the police chief, who had been with the department for 28 years, police chief for 2 years, the first black female police chief in Seattle's history, Carmen Best, resigned effective immediately. Now, there's a whole lot to quote unquote unpack here, as the cool kids would say. But first, I'm gonna start with the city council, why they did what they did, who voted for it, who voted against it. Then we'll talk about Carmen Best, the now former, I guess, police chief. And also we'll talk about Seattle in general and what led up to this whole environment we have right now in the city and also on the entire left coast of the US of A. City council, they voted, like I said, near unanimously. There was only 2 votes that did not vote yay. One person was simply not there. They were absent, so they didn't vote at all. The other person, that's Kshama Savant. Now, Kshama Savant is the most radical person on the entire city council, in my humble opinion. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments below. But she is an open socialist, communist, whatever you want to say. She's done speeches and talks for them. Like, she's not even really trying to hide it. And she's also the person that allowed the so-called protesters, really rioters, into the city hall after it had been ordered closed by the mayor. Jenny from the block Durkin, is also a nut job herself, but that's a different story. We'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, she is a person that'd be on the front lines, Kshama Savant that is, talking about how police should be defunded. We got to abolish the police. She's the most radical. She probably voted against the defunding of the police as far as what they were able to come up with in the terms because it didn't go far enough. All right. Now let's get into the terms of what defunding the police looks like. It will not be a suburb, unlike what AOC was talking about a few weeks ago. Now, they're going to cut 100 total officers from the force, 32 patrol officers, 38 specialized units like SWAT, Harbor Patrol, and mounted officers. They're also going to cut the homeless encampment team. Their whole job is to go in and break up these homeless little dens. It's pretty much what they are. And the reason why I say dens and kind of, referring them to animals is because what you have are not just homeless people. All right. Homeless people do not live like how the homeless live in Freeport, Washington. All right. They live like that because they're on drugs. If you have a patch of mud with just filth and like if you have a thing that looks like a zombie built it, it's because a zombie probably did build it. But rather than it being the video game, Resident Evil, Last of Us, what you have are people that are on drugs, okay? Freeport, Washington has been going down the tubes for a very long time, okay? The drugs are pretty much legal. Nobody's getting arrested for drugs. You could pretty much just shoot heroin in the middle of the daytime. It's okay. You can smoke meth. You can be homeless in a tent, in a residential area, business area, whatever, shoot heroin, smoke meth, it's fine. Okay, that's pretty much what's going on right now in Freeport, Washington. And the reason why I'm calling it Freeport is because you're able to go there as a dope fiend and pretty much be a dope fiend for a living because you get all kinds of benefits from the city and also the so-called NGOs, non-governmental organizations that come in and try to help you. They give you, a bunch of food and maybe even some financial assistance, clean needles, everything you need. So if you happen to be a junkie living somewhere out in the boondocks in Idaho, you can just travel to Seattle and get all kind of benefits and money and free needles, and you're not being harassed by the police. You can go out there, be junkie on the house. That's pretty much what's going on right there in Seattle. This is why this kind of environment exists, where you could just be homeless on the street, shooting drugs, where the police aren't really valued as much. And the morale of the police has got to be very low. I mean, I feel like Carmen Best probably wanted to quit long before all this stuff happened with George Floyd and Black Lives Matter and Antifa and defunding the police. She probably wanted to have been gone for a long time. Like, officers have been quitting for a long time. And a lot of them, when they quit, they feel like they've abandoned their team. They feel like they've abandoned their city because Carmen Best is from, I think, Tacoma, which is right there. So she doesn't really want to leave. Been there 28 years, but she has no choice now. She has no choice because The mayor is not letting their police. They're defunding the police. What are you really going to do? If you can't break up the crackhead dens or the heroin hallways, whatever you want to call it, the heroin huts, if you can't break those up, if you can't arrest anybody that's a lawmaker, then you have the crazy policies talking about, fight for $15 hour minimum wage. You got businesses closing. Therefore, you're going to have more petty crime due to lack of opportunity for employment. So, you just don't have a really good situation at all. All right. Now, back to Carmen Best. Some said that the only reason why she quit is because of the salary drop. I was reading that her salary was cut by $100,000, but that's not true. That was a proposed measure to cut her salary about 40%. That's probably why Kashama Savant voted against it, because, again, the bill did not go far enough. She wanted more cuts, but they capped her salary at $275,000, and it was a cut of 6%. It's still a cut regardless, but $275 is not bad. The reason why she quit, in my humble opinion, is because of defunding police in general, cutting officers' jobs. And then there was no support when all this stuff with BLM was going on. The Chaz Chop area, that was a whole debacle. Good grief. That went on for like 2 months? You had, I think, 2 or 3 young black men that got shot, killed. Actually, one of them was not a man. Talking about a 16-year-old boy who got shot and killed near the zone. One guy who had special needs, I think that might have been Horace Lorenzo Anderson Jr. He might have been not necessarily intelligent enough to understand what's going on, and then he ended up dead. Okay, you had his dad on TV crying. The mayor didn't even really call him. Trump called the man who lost his son before the mayor did. So you don't have any help in leadership. The city council, the mayor, the governor of the state, Jay Inslee's not helping. So what are you going to do? You have no other choice but to resign, and you're going to see a lot more officers do the same thing. Okay, they're not getting paid what they should get paid. They don't have any support. They can't really do anything. What's the point of having police if you're going to have just lawlessness reign supreme? If you're going to let people just tear up stuff, let them set up Chaz Chop, let them smoke heroin or shoot heroin, whatever they want to do out in public, what are you really doing? And of course, as a result of all the action regarding defunding the police or being against the police, you have crime just shooting up exponentially. The police are there for a reason. Defunding the police does not make a city like Seattle, Washington turn into a suburb, AOC. Or the same thing with Portland, Oregon, San Francisco, Los Angeles. You don't have just a Shangri-La arise from the ashes of lawlessness. That's not how that goes. So shout out to Carmen Best for resigning from Seattle Police Department. Hopefully she writes a book. If she writes a book, I'm reading it first thing. I want it to be a tell-all. Tell us about what's happening right now in Seattle in general. There's a documentary about this. This is not an ad, by the way, not a plug, but I've seen it a few times myself because it's a good documentary in general, but it's a good case study on urban decay when you allow these far leftist ideas to come into the city. Letting drugs run rampant, not picking up, little crimes like broken windows. When you just let little stuff go, it balloons, it grows into bigger things. What's the old saying? Nip it in the bud before it becomes a problem, before it becomes this tremendous weed overtaking your whole lawn. Okay, nip it in the bud. Get it right when it starts. Oh, and the documentary is called Seattle is Dying. It was done by Como. That's a local news station out there in Seattle. You got to watch it. If you live anywhere on the left coast, or if you think that legalizing drugs and not letting officers arrest for petty crime, and that's a good idea to you, and you want to see a case study, look no further than right here in the United States. Some would say, oh, ABL, look at Portugal. Look at how well they do. Well, I don't know how well or how poorly Portugal is doing. But what I do know is that, number one, that's not the United States. And number two, this is a very small European country with like 5 to 10 million people. It's not the same thing. Just look right here. If you want to see an example of what happens when you just say no more police or less police and drugs everywhere, just letting little crimes run rampant, look at San Francisco, where you just allow people to doo-doo on the ground. Just look at it. Look at Portland, Oregon. Look at Seattle, Washington. This is lawlessness. This is chaos. This is confusion. Okay. And it will only get worse from here. And you know why I know it's not a matter of a so-called homeless issue, and it's a matter of actual policies on the books, is because in Seattle, Washington, things are one way, But right across the water, right across the Sound, you have Bellevue, Washington. It's right there. Okay. You don't have the Seattle issues in Bellevue. Okay. You can kind of see it a little bit clearer in parts of California. I think Carson City is right next to another city. I forget the name of the city it's up against. It might be LA proper. But one city does not allow just trash on the ground, stuff under a bridge, and the other one does. So right at the line of demarcation in between the two cities, you got trash on one side and sparkling, glistening nothing on the other. It's because of the rules that are on the books. It's because of policy. Okay. If you don't have proper policy and rules on the books, you're going to have chaos. You're going to have lawlessness. You're going to have Seattle, Washington. But I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? Was it a good idea for Seattle to defund the police? If that's your viewpoint, let me know why in the comments below. Or was it a bad idea for Seattle to defund their police? If that's your viewpoint, let me know why in the comments below. You pretty much know where I stand. This was a terrible idea, and all it's going to do is just create more crime, more chaos, more lawlessness, and just a general lack of safety or confidence in safety for the citizens that live there. I feel bad for the regular everyday normies that live in Seattle that aren't involved in politics, that are even conservative. What are they going to do? Now, to anyone that wants to leave Seattle, please, I implore you, listen to me right now. Do not take the same Seattle habits with you. Don't be so sympathetic towards so-called homeless. No, don't look at it as homeless. These are drug addicts, okay? These are drug addicts. Don't just let them be out here in the street shooting heroin all day in front of your kids, okay? When you go to a new place like Texas, don't create a left coast enclave like Austin is right now. Don't do that. When in Rome, do as Romans. Should be pretty simple. If you follow that kind of advice, you should be good in a new place. Maybe you could stay and save where you are right now in Seattle, but I fear that it may be too far gone. The city council, all far leftists, the mayor, far leftist, governor, far leftist. What are you really going to do? It's kind of hard to escape. But if you want to escape, take my advice. Do not vote the same way. Do not have the same type of mentality towards so-called homeless. You know, when in Rome, do as Romans. You should be fine. But whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.